Hi everyone. So first of all, as you will notice, we got a technological upgrade. So thank you to Dr. Hamilton for getting a tablet so that we could move from my shaky webcam and paper taped on desk and Sharpies to a slightly nicer technology. So hopefully this will help facilitate these, but also I apologize if I'm in this first few videos I'm getting used to using this computer technology. But anyways, today we're going to talk about energy, just really quickly recap some of the concepts we talked about in lecture. And first I wanted to address a misconception. Misconception, and I wanted to address this because I would say I'm at fault for perpetuating this misconception about chemical bonds and energy, and I just want to clarify this because I think it'll be important for when we're talking about the chemical reactions of photosynthesis and respiration. Okay, so we discussed that in my last video about nutrition. We discussed that animals, at least, get our energy from our food, and that energy is stored in the molecules that make up our food. And I mentioned that the bonds between the atoms contain energy, but it's not just the breaking of the bonds that release energy. Otherwise, all chemical reactions would release energy, right? But that's not the case. Really, what it turns out to be is it's instead about whether the bonds you start out with contain more or less energy than the bonds you end up with. So let's think about this. Okay, so in the case of the molecules we've been talking about in class, so if this is, let me work on figuring this out. Okay, so this is energy. Oops. Okay, sorry, energy. So this is the energy contained in the bonds. The chemical, so the molecules, the bonds holding the atoms together in a molecule do indeed contain energy, but it's not necessarily just about breaking them. So what happens is some molecules, their bonds are fairly unstable and require quite a bit of energy to stay together. So that would be a good, so glucose or carbohydrates would be a good example of this. Okay, so let's just use glucose as an example. Glucose has fairly unstable bonds. It requires some energy, and they contain some energy to hold those bonds together. Compared to, say, over here might be carbon dioxide and water, which have fairly stable bonds. H2O, water. So the bonds holding the molecules, the atoms together, carbon and oxygen, or holding the atoms of the hydrogen and oxygen together, are fairly stable. They don't take quite a lot of energy to kind of hold these atoms together. So it's really about this difference between the bonds, the energy in the bonds of glucose molecule compared to the lower energy of the carbon dioxide bond. So you can imagine, let me change the colors here, you can imagine if we're going from glucose to carbon dioxide and water, so for this is what we would call combustion, right? Or biologically, we might call it metabolism. Right, so converting glucose into, breaking apart glucose and turning that into carbon dioxide and water, there's the glucose bonds have more energy than the bonds in carbon dioxide and water. So overall, you're releasing energy because you're going from high energy bonds to low energy bonds and have this kind of excess energy left over, this difference right here, right? Conversely, if we were talking maybe about going the other way, so moving from taking carbon dioxide and water and breaking the bonds between these atoms and turning that into glucose, what is that reaction called? Well, that's photosynthesis, right? I apologize for my handwriting. I've been practicing. I will make it get better. I promise. Okay, so this, going the opposite direction, going from very low energy bonds and then turning those into high energy bonds. you're going to need to have some input of energy to, think about it like kind of rolling a ball uphill, right? You need to add some energy in order to form those glucose bonds. And where do we get our energy, or where do plants get their energy from photosynthesis, for photosynthesis to occur, right? They get it from the sun in this case, okay? So again, so it's not necessarily that all bonds, if you break any bonds, they're going to release energy. It's really about what you start with, what you're starting with, and what you're ending with, and the difference between the two. Okay, so hopefully that will clear up clear this up. Again, you won't need to know the specifics for the class, but it's useful to understand the difference between combustion, metabolism. I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking out metabolism. I should have said this should have been called. I should have called this respiration. Sorry, respiration. Respiration. Sorry, not metabolism. Whoops. Okay. Okay. That's okay. So yeah. So this is more just kind of important to understand the difference between respiration and photosynthesis. And also, I just didn't want any chemistry teachers to come and yell at me for perpetuating this misconception. Okay. So now that we have covered that, what I want to do is address some questions, or a question that would have come up in class. Okay, so a question that I got was, okay, so I don't get this whole energy transfer idea. Why is energy lost as you move up the food chain, and how does that relate to the biomass of plants, herbivores, and carnivores? That's a good question. Okay, so let's think about an individual organism's energy bonds. Okay, so let's just draw. Here's some organism. Wait. This will work. Okay, so here's some, I like to draw just concept maps. Okay, so here is our organism. Okay, and let's think about the energy going into and out of this organism, right? Where does the energy coming from, and how does it relate to its biomass? Okay, so remember, where do organisms get their energy from? Well, if they're plants, they get their energy right from the sun. Right, plants. Okay, but if they're animals, they're getting their energy from their food, right? Okay. Okay, animals get their energy from their, from their food. Okay. Okay. Okay, maybe I will edit that part out, hopefully. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so they are getting their energy from their food. Technical difficulties. Okay, stop it. Okay. Okay, so the inputs for plants, of course, is the energy is coming from the sun, and animals get their energy from their food, right? And what does that energy then turn into? Well, they can store energy in their body, right, as biomass. So biomass is just the mass or matter that makes up their body, and of course, which is made of atoms and molecules, and of course the bonds between those atoms contain some energy, right? Okay, so it can be kind of stored in biomass, or it can be put to work, right? So basically, an output of energy might be kinetic energy. We talked about kinetic energy, right? Is movement. Kinetic energy, right? Or work, right? So you might, even plants, use energy, on a cellular level. They may, and some plants actually do have some movement, but they do use energy for work, right, on a cellular level as well. And also, we mentioned that we lose energy to the environment in the form of heat, right? Okay, so these energy outputs that organisms are kind of using or losing to environment are lost to the environment, right? It's not stored in its biomass. You can imagine over the course of a lifetime, an organism is going to be doing quite a bit of work and losing a lot of heat to the environment, and not a lot of the biomass, or not a lot of the energy is actually that it ingests or gets from the sun is actually stored in its biomass. So this is what we're talking about when we're saying that you lose energy to the environment, right? So if you can imagine, if this organism was, say, a bunny. So a bunny has a certain amount of biomass, and over its lifetime, it's going to need to eat way more grass, or let's say vegetables, right, than its biomass, because so much of this energy stored in the grass it's eating is going to be used up as work or heat, right? Okay, so if you can think about that, if this is kind of the equivalent amount of grass, it needs to eat a lot of grass in order to just maintain its own body weight and do all the work and that it needs to do. So you can imagine that if you then take a fox, a fox would have to eat a bunch of bunnies, and so if you kind of went down the line, so there'd be less foxes than there are bunnies, and there'd be less bunnies than there are grass. Because each organism is going to need way more kind of food or energy coming in than its body actually will hold or store. Okay, so that's why when we are looking kind of at the food webs or the food chains, when we talked about producers, right? We had this kind of pyramid where you have a lot of producers. Right? So here's the producers, basically plants, right? And then as you move up, only a fraction of that is actually would actually then turn into herbivore biomass. Oh, this pen is not being happy with me. Okay. Herbivores, okay? Right? And then, again, even a smaller percentage of that are going to be predators. Right, because each predator is going to need to eat a bunch of herbivores, and each herbivore that a predator eats is going to need to eat a lot of plants, right? So as you go up the food chain, as you go higher and higher in the food chain, you get less and less biomass because so much of the energy that's taken up in the herbivores by eating plants is being lost to the environment as heat or them moving around, right? So this is all energy that's not being contained kind of within biomass, okay? And that's why you don't tend to have a whole lot of top predators, right? This might be a top predator, right? Okay. So we can think about, what this means for the food chain, right? And what we might predict to see in terms of numbers and kind of biomass, right? Biomass, again, remember, is just the mass of an organism, or in this case, it might be the mass of all the producers. If you grabbed all the, plants in an area and weighed that, that would be that biomass, right? So you can think about how that might affect our food chains and how many levels we have, how many predators we have, okay? And kind of what the limits are. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Okay, so I want to leave you with, I don't want to just, kind of review these. I also want to give you guys practice on kind of applying these questions or these concepts to new questions, right? Because that's what you see on the exam. That's what we're trying to get you guys to do is think about the concepts you learn and then apply them to new situations. So from now on, every video I'm going to end with an application question, and I really encourage you to leave comments. Start a discussion, leave comments on the video. There's a couple people who are subscribers, so feel free to leave comments. I think you can leave them anonymously. But I'll see. But today's application question, or the application question for this energy video is, so why do the largest land and ocean animals feed fairly low on the food chain? So, for example, if you think about the largest land animals, those would be things like elephants, definitely is the largest land animal. Giraffes are some of the biggest. Hippos, right? These are organisms that have are quite large. And then if you look at the ocean, we have some fairly large fish, and sharks are quite large. But if you look at the largest of the large creatures in the ocean, those are things like blue whales, right? And actually, the largest shark is a whale shark, and it's this really big shark. And the largest of these fish and mammals in the ocean, they actually aren't predators. They eat plankton, things that kind of float in the water, which are either plants or very, very small kind of little animals. So why aren't they eating sharks? They're much bigger than great white sharks. Why aren't they eating great white sharks instead? Okay, so think about what you learned. That should be why are they not top predators like lions and great white sharks, right? Why do these large land and ocean animals feed fairly low on the food chain? Okay, so think about that. Leave comments if you can generate some hypotheses about there's some multiple hypotheses of why this might be. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.